Hello everyone, welcome back to the Analyst by Vajiram and Ravi, dated 9th May 2026. Today again we will be discussing some important topics that has appeared in today's The Hindu and the Indian Express newspapers which are relevant for your examination. In the initial two topics, we have included two mains practice questions which will be useful for your upcoming mains examination. In the analysis section, under our first topic, we will look into various aspects of India's defense strategy that has changed significantly in last few years. After that, in our second topic, we'll try to understand various aspects of the drug menace in India, particularly in Punjab, possible reasons and solutions. Thereafter, keeping in mind the upcoming prelims examination 2026, we will discuss 5 important prelims pointers that will be highly useful for your preparation. So stay tuned. So let's start with the first topic, that is a watershed moment in India's defense posture. The context of this topic is that in today's The Hindu newspaper, a write-up has appeared that is emphasizing on the visible shift in the India's defense posture as well as India's defense strategy. And this editorial is written by none other than Mr. R.K.S. Bhadauria, who is the former Air Chief of India's Air Force. And this topic is related to your GS Paper 3 defense. So on 22nd of April 2025, a tragic incident happened. A terrorist attack happened in the Pahalgam region of the Jammu and Kashmir, and that led to death of 26 innocent civilians. And that was a clear challenge to India's government, defense forces as well as to the establishment. And that is the reason, in response to that terrorist attack, India launched Operation Sindoor at 1:05 AM on 7th of May 2025, where India targeted various terrorist infrastructure, the terrorist locations, terrorist sites like Murid Ke, Bahawalpur, Sialkot, etc. were targeted. And that sent a clear message to the Pakistan as well as to the terrorist organizations that we know where these sites are located. We know that various infrastructure that are located in these regions. Plus, we also know that where your training centers as well as other establishments are located. And that shows a paradigm shift in India's political military doctrine as well as the national security approach, that India was earlier very defensive, very hesitant whenever any kind of terrorist attack that was happening. But now that has completely changed to offensive defense, that now India will not be hesitant. For example, after the Pathankot, Uri attack, etc. that happened, we went with the surgical strike. After Pulwama attack, again there was a surgical strike that happened. And after this Pahalgam attack, India launched an Operation Sindoor itself. So that shows that India is now showing zero tolerance towards the terrorist related incidents. India is not going for the restraint that earlier India was choosing the path of diplomacy, talks, communication. India was submitting the dossiers to the Pakistan, and on which the Pakistan was not taking any action. And that is the reason now India has been more offensive in its approach while dealing with the menace of terrorism. The 9 terror camps were destroyed, and 23 to 24 minutes was the total duration of that operation itself. And after this Operation Sindoor, when India targeted various terrorist sites in Pakistan, Pakistan also responded with drone attacks, missile attacks, etc., which India tackled effectively, that none of our air bases or any other infrastructure was hit. But India further targeted various air bases deep in Pakistan. We also targeted the various radar systems, communication systems of the Pakistan. So this particular approach is showing a visible shift in India's defense doctrine, which is from reactive restraints, now it has shifted to zero tolerance policy towards any incident of terrorism. What is the difference between reactive restraint to the zero tolerance? That earlier the response was very careful, limited, and only after something happened, India was taking an action. For example, various bomb blasts, etc. were happening in India, various terrorist attacks were happening, and we were taking a cautious approach whenever any kind of terrorist attack was happening to avoid escalation. Why? Because both the countries are nuclear. So there was an apprehension that this particular escalation should not go up till the nuclear threshold. That is the reason there was a hesitancy, there was a cautious approach. Also, there was a delayed and measured response, and it mainly focused on diplomacy, communication, etc. And the focus was minimizing retaliation, especially the kinetic warfare like missile attacks, drone attacks, or the targeting of the terrorist infrastructure, especially in the Pakistan region, were being avoided. Also, the retaliation was limited and a targeted approach was generally seen. Whereas now it has shifted to zero tolerance, that now the response is much more strict, aggressive, and this does not allow for any leniency, that there will be zero tolerance towards any terrorism, any threats, that India has been very vocal about the terrorism. For example, in the G20 summit itself, we went with the proper voice against the terrorism, against the narco-terrorism, etc. Then FATF, we have been a vocal supporter for various restrictions and blacklisting of the Pakistan, especially with regard to the terrorist financing, etc., that the Pakistan is doing. And under this zero tolerance, the response is immediate, strong, and decisive, which will show some visible changes, that in future the terrorist organizations, the Pakistan, will think twice before thinking of any terrorist attack in Pakistan, in India. Also, this is an offensive strategy to deter any future attacks, that in future if the terrorist organizations or the Pakistan government is thinking to support, or their intelligence agency ISI is thinking to support any terrorist attack, they will be thinking twice, because next time the response can be much more lethal. Also, national security is above all considerations, because earlier the hesitancy was also because of the fact that there may be a cost that may be involved whenever we will be escalating. There may be a negative impact on India's economic growth, etc. So that was also the considerations that was limiting the response of India. But now, above everything, national security is of the paramount importance, and that is the reason the response has become much more offensive. And the action beyond borders is required, that earlier whatever the response was, we were keeping them limited within the international borders, within the LOC itself, but now we are targeting even beyond borders, and some of the sites that were targeted, they were way deep in the Pakistan itself. For example, here you can see some of the sites were in deep Pakistan, for example Jakokabad, Noor Khan Air Base, Kirana Hills, etc., which are also the strategic sites. So now what we can say, that in the past the countries have shown the restraint after the terrorist attack to avoid any kind of escalation, and now the country responds strongly, immediately, against the terrorism or the threats. For example, 2016 surgical strikes that happened, or the Operation Sindoor, that is showing a clear message that now terrorism will be met with the firm, swift, and the proportionate action. That what, in proportion to the terrorist attack, in proportion to the response of the Pakistan, our response will be much more lethal. So now the cross-border terrorism will be treated as an act of war that will be against the India itself, and that will give a option to India to respond effectively with the help of defense forces. India also demonstrated willingness for the direct retaliation despite the nuclear overhang that was there in the past, that was limiting India's kinetic warfare capabilities, that was limiting the full use of India's kinetic warfare capabilities, and that was also limiting our response, because this nuclear overhang, this hesitancy, this apprehension that this may escalate to the nuclear level. What are the major features of the Operation Sindoor? First of all, it was an integrated action by India's Air Force, Army, and Indian Navy, and there was a coordinated response, and that also shows the synergy that has been developed between the defense forces. Also, various terrorist targets that were stuck in the Pakistan, and some of these sites like Bahawalpur, Muridke, etc., were also the headquarters of the heads of the various terrorist organizations. Also, this shows the seamless tri-services coordination. More than that, this was one of the operation which was mainly dependent on the indigenous technologies, that was mainly dependent on the indigenous equipments that we were using. For example, instead of being dependent on the GPS technology for the communication, we were using the India's Desi GPS system Navik. We also used the Akash surface to air missile system. We also used various other air defense system against the drones, swarms of the drones or missiles, etc. So here, the Indian Armed Force, when they launched the coordinated and accurate missile strikes on 9 terrorist bases, these were one of the important locations related to Jaish-e-Mohammed, the Lashkar-e-Taiba, which are mainly responsible for the major terrorist attacks that were happening. And in retaliation, Pakistan drone and missile attacks on Indian cities and military bases on 7th, 8th and 9th May of 2025 happened. India deployed kamikaze drones with an objective of neutralizing Pakistan air defense capabilities. We used the loitering munitions that again attacked the radar system and various other communication systems of Pakistan. India's air defense system, the multi-layered air defense system, successfully intercepted all incoming threats, resulting in minimal loss of life or property. In contrast, Pakistan HQ-9 air defense system was exposed as weak because it was not able to tackle whatever the launches that were happening from India. Also, Pakistan's attempt was also to attack Delhi because one of the missile was properly intercepted near Sirsa in Haryana itself, that is way close to Delhi. Also, within just 3 hours, India has targeted 11 military installations, including Noor Khan, Murid Ke, Sukur, Sialkot, etc. So that also shows India's mature response, that India was not targeting any civilian infrastructure. India was not disturbing the population of the Pakistan. Rather, this response was completely targeted towards first the terrorist sites and then to the military installations of the Pakistan, from where the attacks were coming to India. And this India, whatever the response was, that it was completely precise. For example, you can see that when we have to target this air base, you can see the level of precision that it has just directly hit that building itself. Whenever we had to hit the air strips of any air base, we have hit that effectively. Similarly, the infrastructure in Bahawalpur itself, that was the headquarters of Jaish-e-Mohammed. So there also the attack was very pinpoint. The BrahMos missile that was used for targeting, that was very precise, especially after the surgical strike that happened earlier. Also, we have significantly improved overall for the preciseness, etc. of our air strikes. Air defense, robust network air to defense system were deployed, S-400 missile systems that effectively denied Pakistan's airspace access. And these are the major military installations which are attacked and terror bases which were earlier attacked during the Operation Sindoor. Then you have the strategic significance of this particular response. So it showed India's capability for rapid high impact operations. The escalation control under the nuclear conditions also happened. The precision targetings were done to avoid any attack on the civilian infrastructure. Pakistan reportedly forced to seek the ceasefire quickly. The Directorate General of Military Operations of Pakistan talked to DGMO of India to go for the ceasefire. But this clearly sent a new strategic messaging that there is a strong deterrence signal against the cross-border terrorism that will be treated as an act of war. That also indicates the emergence of new normal in India's security doctrine, that now we are not hesitant, now we are not in dual mindedness that whether we should attack or not. Also, it highlights India's willingness to impose cost on the state-sponsored terrorism, that if the state is sponsoring terrorism, then they should also bear a cost. We will also target their terrorist infrastructure and we will also target their military installations. Plus, this was a response that was not completely limited to the offensive response. It was not limited to targeting the terrorist sites and the air bases. It was not limited to only the kinetic warfare. Rather, here we also kept Indus Water Treaty in abeyance. That was a kind of another measure that India has taken, because Indus Water Treaty is also a very crucial aspect in response to, with regard to the overall availability of the water in the Pakistan. And so on one hand, we have kept the Indus Water Treaty in abeyance. On second hand, we have also launched the Operation Sindoor. The major focus was on innovate, design and manufacture in India, that whatever the technology that we are using here, it is more or less completely focusing on the indigenous use itself. And we are also strengthening the defense manufacturing, aerospace, space, cybersecurity and artificial intelligence. And emphasis is on the accelerating Atmanirbhar Atmanirbhar Bharat in defense sector with the greater role of the DRDO, the various defense public sector undertakings, for example, Bharat Electronics Limited, Bharat Defense Limited, etc. The MSMEs are further being supported. Various startups, for example, Idea Forge is one of the startup that is providing the drones. Government is also providing support and hand-holding to various startups in the defense manufacturing. Slowly and gradually we are taking the integration of the private sector also. For example, Tata Defense, Adani Defense, etc. They are also slowly and gradually focusing on this self-sufficiency in the defense manufacturing. Then if you see the major technologies that were used in the Operation Sindoor, for the guidance and the navigation, we used the Navik. But more than that, the guidance and navigation was identified as one of the 75 priority technology area after the DRDO's Anusandhan Chintar Sivir that happened in 2022. Also, the advanced satellite system, they can identify objects as small as 25 to 30 centimeter. So that was giving an eye to the defense forces to ensure that the strikes are completely targeted. The Navik, it was providing the positional accuracy of around 10 to 20 centimeter. The strong performance of the propulsion systems, warhead and fuses improved the weapon lethality and reliability. Along with that, India has also taken various learnings from Operation Sindoor, that how they should keep themselves prepared for any contingency that may arise in future. What should be the response? What should be the changes in the response if they has to be done in future? Also, missile technologies, they were strengthened through the integrated guided missile development program, which was led by the former president of India, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam ji. So that also, this Akash Air defense system or other missiles that India has developed, we have developed the Agni system, etc. That was mainly for this kind of needs itself. We were already knowing that this kind of contingency may come in future, and that is the reason we should be completely prepared for that. More than that, these particular missile systems or the technologies when a country has, this also creates a deterrence that other country will think twice before attacking. The radars and the air defense system, for example, Russia's S-4 air defense system that received major attention for its operation role, the success that it has achieved. India also used the layered air defense network combining radar and missile systems. The indigenous systems including Rajendra radar, Rohini 3D radar, low-level lightweight radar, etc. They were used that was providing an effective response. The Samar and Akash missile system was used against the low-flying aerial targets. Upgraded Bofors anti-aircraft guns were reportedly used to neutralize drones in Jammu and Kashmir, as well as in other bordering areas like Gujarat, etc. Also, upgrades include radar, electro-optical sensors and auto-tracking systems. Upgraded system also deployed near line of actual control so that in case of dual front attack, India's response can be effective. Also, unmanned aerial vehicle. This Operation Sindoor also was one of the engagement that showed that how the wars are now going to be mainly fought based on the technology itself, based on the new age warheads itself. For example, in future, the conventional military attacks probably would not happen. Rather, it will be the technology, it will be the UAVs, etc. that will be used, and that has been also visible in the Russia-Ukraine war. That has been also visible in the recent attack by the US and Israel in Iran, where the fighter jets were used, the missiles were used to attack. But the conventional people-to-people fight was not happening. So it was the first major drone-centric India-Pakistan conflict. Deep penetration drone strikes were done in Pakistan for targeting various radars, etc. Our air drone systems, the anti-drone systems like Bhargav Astra, like Indrajal, etc., they were very effective in tackling the swarms of drones that were sent by Pakistan. The strategic target engagement was done. Ineffective Pakistan drone swarms. Swarms are the large number of drones when they are coming programming at once itself. And India's indigenous drone capabilities were also improved. The industry academia collaboration were done, domestic manufacturing ecosystem that was improved, and also there was the securing of the critical supply chains with regard to the supply of the new age technologies and as well as other defense equipments. Then Akash missile system, which is the indigenous Akash surface to air missile system that was also used to target various missiles and other fighter jets, etc. Short to medium range mobile air defense system that is developed by DRDO. It is used by IAF and Indian Army. It also provides defense against aircraft, missile, drones, UAVs, and that has been developed under the integrated program for the missile development. And mainly the indigenous content is being also used. That also gives us an strategic advantage, because whenever we are dependent on the foreign players, so that gives us leverage to those countries. For example, in the manufacturing of the Tejas fighter jet, we are dependent on the supply of engine from GE Aerospace, which is an US based company, which is an American company. So whenever there is delay in supply of those engines, that is directly impacting the overall availability and supply of the Tejas. And the major contributors were the major defense public sector undertakings, for example, Bharat Electronics Limited, Bharat Defense Limited, etc. But there are certain existing fault lines in the national security that needs to be properly bridged. For example, intelligence gaps are there. For example, we do not have a coordinated real-time intelligence. And whenever the intelligence is there, the response is not that effective, and that has been one of the reasons why we have faced some of the terrorist attacks in the Pakistan. So the actionable intelligence is still inconsistent. That lack coordinations between the civilian and the military agencies itself. For example, you can see that few months back there was a terrorist attack, there was a bomb blast that happened near the Red Fort itself. So that also shows that there are certain intelligence gaps that needs to be filled properly. Then border management, that is again that line of control, which is a ceasefire line between the India and Pakistan. There are vulnerabilities, there are various attacks that keeps on happening. Mortars, etc. are used across the LOC. There are difficult terrains and the porous gaps that leads to a situation where the cross-border insurgency happen, the cross-border movement of the people, movement of the terrorists happen. Also, smart fencing and tech integration that is not yet fully deployed. For example, bold QRT, etc., that has been utilized for the proper fencing, etc., that hasn't been very effective, especially in the difficult terrains and the areas where the border are porous. Along with that, there is a vibrant village program that was being used for the development of the villages across the borders. Earlier it was limited to the LAC itself, but now this has been expanded to all the borders. Delayed modernization, for example, procurement bottlenecks and bureaucratic delays are there. There is slow and indigenous defense production is happening. The jointness and the theater command, for example, tri-service synergy is still work in progress. Cyber and space vulnerabilities, that threats from the state and non-state actors like China, Pakistan-based groups, that also shows the vulnerabilities. Terror ecosystem in the Pakistan, that Pakistan continues to harbor terror groups under the nuclear shield. No global pressure or the accountability mechanism is tackling that menace of the state-sponsored terrorism effectively. More than that, the new menace like cyber attacks that has gained attention. For example, during the Operation Sindoor and after that, various India's important websites, etc., were targeted by various cyber attacks based in the Pakistan, which were from the Pakistan. So what should be done? What is the need of the hour? How we can tackle all the fault lines effectively? For example, we need a dedicated cyber command. We can establish an integrated defense cyber agency with an offensive defensive capabilities, that in the future, if there can be a possibility of any cyber attack that might happen, so India should respond before that cyber attack is happening. We should attack those cyber attackers, their infrastructure, their softwares, etc., that are being used, and that will only be possible when we will have the sufficient intelligence beforehand. We also need to revamp our intelligence agencies. For example, we need to have a proper seamless institutional coordination coordination between the research and analysis wing, intelligence bureau, then NTRO, etc., or the state based whatever the intelligence, the local intelligence units, etc., are there. There should be a proper coordination between them to ensure that whatever the intelligence is there, that is being shared in an effective and timely manner, and there should be a proper response that can be taken for them. Also, border infrastructure gaps. We need to accelerate the construction of all weather roads to improve the overall connectivity. The tunnels that are there, they needs to be further improved. Advanced landing grounds in border zones, etc., they need to be further built. For example, Daulat Beg Oldie is one of the airstrips that is located in one of the highest areas. So that needs to be further revamped to ensure that in future, if there is a need, so we can ensure that our aircrafts, etc., can land there. Satellite and space surveillance, that we can launch the dedicated military satellites for 24/7 intelligence surveillance and reconnaissance, 24/7 ISR over the line of control and line of actual control, so that we can have a proper intelligence about any violations of the ceasefire, etc., that are happening. We also need to secure the communication system. We can deploy the quantum resistant, and we can also use the encrypted military communication networks for the seamless tri-service operations. All this will help in ensuring that whatever the vulnerability that we have with regard to the cyber attacks, that remains at the minimal level. And this is a mains practice question that you people can write from this particular topic. Moving towards our next topic, that is menace of drug abuse. The context of this topic is that Honorable Chief Justice of India raises alarm over the Punjab drug menace. He also said that the situation is going out of hand, and this particular topic is related to your GS paper 2 health. So as per this United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime World Drug Report 2022, India had the 4th highest opium seizures globally in 2020. That was 5.2 tons. India recorded the 3rd highest morphine seizures globally in 2020. That was 0.7 tons. India accounted for 7% of global opium seizures in 2019. India also accounted for 2% of global heroin seizures in 2019. And if you see this data from the national data from Narcotics Control Bureau or NCB, that over 21 lakh kilogram of drugs were seized between 2022 and 24. Also, this NCB, this comes under the Ministry of Home Affairs. There is another body with the name of Central Bureau of Narcotics. That comes under the Ministry of Finance. Okay? In the last year, 2025 prelims examination itself, there was a question that was asked with regard to the ED, Enforcement Directorate. You people tell me that Enforcement Directorate comes under which ministry? So here, the Central Bureau of Narcotics comes under the Ministry of Finance, and the major aim of this Central Bureau of Narcotics is to give licenses for the legit or the legal trade of opium, etc., that will be used for making medicines. Along with that, if you see that in the Punjab also in 2023, starting from 2020 to 23, consistently there has been various drugs that were seized by the state police as well as by the other law enforcement agencies. Then if you see this data from the Narcotics, Drug and Psychotropic Substance Act data, that is with regard to the questions that were raised in the parliament, that Kerala, Maharashtra, Punjab, these are some of the states with the most of the drug cases that are happening. And if you see the drug haul in the Punjab, this is another data from the state government, that there has been a decline in the number of cases. There has been also a decline in the number of arrests as well as the seizure of the drugs that are happening in the Punjab. But still the situation is very abysmal. Why? Because 76% of opioid dependents in Punjab are from 18 to 35 years of the age. This is the age which is crucial for reaping our demographic dividend, which is crucial to ensure that they are contributing to overall economic growth. But when they will be attracted towards the drug abuse, then probably we cannot reap the potential of our this demographic dividend. 56% live in the rural areas, 21% of them are farmers, 27% laborers, unskilled workers, 15% businessmen, 14% are the transport workers who are mainly using this drug abuse. With the rising cases of mental illness, with the rising cases of anxiety, stress, etc., with the other issues that are coming, for example, failures in the personal lives, failure in the jobs, failure in the education, etc., people further are motivated or gets attracted towards this drug abuse. Now we'll see what are the major reasons for high drug abuse, the socio-economic factors which are generally there. That is the report by the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. They gave a report in 2022 that said that 60% of these individuals who are involved in the drug abuse, they are from the economically disadvantaged sections. That when people do not have the sufficient money to afford a proper life, to afford a proper standard of living, they are attracted more towards these drugs to ensure that to come out of that stress, anxiety, etc., which they are facing. Also, the peer pressure and the social influence that also motivates people to move on the path of the drug abuse. For example, whenever the young whenever the young children goes to the college, when other people are doing the drug abuse, they are consuming alcohol, etc., this creates a pressure on that child also, which was not doing anything, to taste it once or to try it once, to have an experience for once itself. And slowly and gradually that person who was just taking that as an experience for once gets habitual to that drug abuse, alcoholism, etc. So a report from NCB in 2018 says that 2.1% of students who are aged between 13 to 17, their peer influence in the urban areas plays a very crucial role for this particular menace, drug abuse. Then mental health and the self-medication, that lack of awareness about the use of the various medicines that can be used for sleeping, etc. So because of this also, at times we see whenever there is lack of awareness, people start consuming these drugs, and that slowly and gradually creates a situation that people get habitual to those medicines. The geographical factors, that this golden triangle and the golden crescent, whose names has also been changed to death crescent and death triangle, which are the major areas where majorly drugs are being produced. In death crescent we have the Iran, Afghanistan and Pakistan, where the major drugs are being produced. Then in death triangle we have the Myanmar, Laos and Thailand, and India is sandwiched between these two regions where majorly drugs are being produced. Plus India has a huge population, India has a huge young population which can attract towards a drug, and that is the reason a high influx of drugs we are witnessing from these bordering countries to India, especially from the Bangladesh, Myanmar border and from the Punjab as well as Jammu and Kashmir border. Also, the law enforcement and lack of proper rehabilitation, that rehab centers which are there, which are run by the government, there is a lack of proper oversight mechanism. Whatever the treatment that are given to them, rehab that are given to them, that are not very effective. The lack of proper conviction of the people who are arrested on the charges of the drug related cases. The bureaucratic apathy, who do not have the sufficient motivation, compassion to act effectively. So with this, all the efforts which are coming, or all the schemes, programs, initiatives which government is taking, that further becomes very less effective. Also, if you see the government initiatives that are taken to address the menace of this drug, so NDPS Act that came in 1985, that mainly provides the legal framework to control the drug production, possession, trafficking as well as consumption. The Narcotics Control Bureau, that is under Ministry of Home Affairs, that is the apex enforcement agencies to combat the drug trafficking and illicit drug trade, and they also collect the coordinated intelligence to take action against any kind of drug abuse and drug trafficking. Then Narco Coordination Center, that is the multi-agency mechanism for better coordination among the center, states and enforcement agencies. and National Action Plan for Drug Demand Reduction. That is, with this, we are going for prevention of drug abuse through awareness, treatment, counseling, and rehabilitation. Nasha Mukt Bharat Abhiyan, that came in 2020, a mass awareness campaign targeting youth, school, colleges, and vulnerable districts are happening. Integrated rehabilitation centers for addicts that provides the de-addiction treatment, counseling, and rehabilitation services, so that the people who were earlier addicted to the drugs, they can be further properly integrated into the society in an effective manner. Then the drug treatment clinics are being set up, especially in the states where the drug abuse is very high. Anti-narcotics task force has been developed with the state level specialized units to strengthen the anti-drug enforcement. Seizure and disposal of narcotics policy enforces the quick destruction of seized drugs to prevent the recirculation. The Project Sunrise, under which HIV prevention rehabilitation programs for the drug users were happening in the Northeast India. Manas, which is a mental health counseling and psychological support that is being provided with the help of call itself. There is a toll-free number people can call and they can get the counseling services, and that helps them in the recovery, that can help them in moving away from the addiction. Border security that is being strengthened with the help of the bold QRT and other measures that government is taking. International cooperation and intelligence sharing, that joint anti-narcotics operation with the neighboring countries and United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, that is happening to tackle the menace of cross-border drugs trade. And states also are taking various initiatives. For example, there has been significant increase in the budget that was allotted by the Punjab state to tackle the menace of the drug. Also, there is a drug census that is going to be done. That is first ever drug and socio-economic census that is being done in the Punjab, where 65 lakh families are being surveyed. 28,000 staffs are deployed to go with that survey. 250 crore budget has been allocated, 3-month timeline. And under this, we will be mapping the drug abuse, socio-economic links will be established, poverty, jobs, education that will be created. There is a visible shift from enforcement to the targeted rehabilitation that will be done under this particular initiative of the Punjab government. Now, what should be done? What should be the way forward? That improved awareness and education, that nationwide campaign on the dangers of the drug abuse needs to be done. People should be made aware. They should be given with the proper knowledge that how this drug abuse is going to impact their overall health, be it the physical, mental, or the psychological health. Along with that, it is also going to impact their learning capabilities, their income earning capabilities, how this is going to impact their overall family. Also, we need to strengthen the law enforcement, that there is need for monitoring and enforcement to disrupt the drug trafficking network. We also need to expand the rehabilitation centers. For example, affordable and accessible rehabilitation facilities needs to be provided. We also need to promote the mental health support. For example, we need to integrate mental health services into the primary health care itself. Then community-based programs that can be developed. For example, local community interventions that engage the families, schools, and youth. They can be developed, and that can further help in creating the awareness. Policy and the legislative reforms that can be done. For example, drug control policies can be developed, and there should be a need of evidence-based policy making, that whatever the policy that is being made, how this is helping in the visible changes on the ground, and how based on the feedback that is coming from the ground, how we are changing the policy. Also, rehabilitation and prevention strategies, they can be further taken based on the feedback that will be coming on the policy. This is a mains practice question that you people can write from this particular topic. Moving towards our prelims pointers section, here the topic is appointment of Chief Election Commissioner. This is related to GS paper 2, Executive and Judiciary, and this has appeared in today's The Indian Express, page number 18. So the background of this particular topic is that there was this judgment with the name Anup Barnwal versus Union of India that came in 2023, where the Supreme Court said that there should be a committee that should recommend the names of the person who should be appointed as election commissioner by the Honorable President of India. And there should be a committee which should recommend the name that person will be appointed as the election commissioner. And the committee that will be the election commissioner appointment committee. It will consist of the Prime Minister of India, leader of opposition in the Lok Sabha, and the Chief Justice of India. This committee should recommend the names. This was said in this Anup Barnwal versus Union of India case. And what was the objective of this particular judgment that was given by the Supreme Court? The objective is to ensure neutrality and independence of the election commission. That is an important public office. That is an office which is going to oversee overall elections that are going to happen in India. And that is the reason there should be a neutral, impartisan person that should be holding the office as the election commissioner. And it will reduce the executive dominance in the appointments process. That here there is the real executive, that is Prime Minister, there is leader of opposition, but along with that judiciary is also having a say in the process of elections. But the government responded with a new act itself. That then act was the Election Appointments Act, that is the Election Appointments Law, where they said that there will be a new selection committee that was provided by the law of the parliament itself. And in this committee there will be Prime Minister, leader of opposition, there will be a union cabinet minister who will be nominated by the Prime Minister itself. So instead of CGI, it will be the union cabinet minister who will be nominated by the Prime Minister itself. And that has been the concern of the Supreme Court, where they have made an observation that what was the parliament's decision to replace the Chief Justice of India with the union minister in the election, that is tyranny of the elected, that the people who are elected by the citizens, this is the tyranny. They are taking the decisions based on their own view. They are not giving considerations to the view of the judiciary. And this is also the tyranny of the majority. The majority, that the majority of the political party who is holding the major seats in the parliament or in the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. So major concern is that executive gets majority control, 2 out of 3 members, that PM and the union cabinet minister who will be nominated by the Prime Minister, they will always be having a same opinion, more or less. So that is giving them an upper hand. Leader of opposition, even if we will have an opposite view, that will not be considered. Why? Because these 2 people are having the majority in that committee, and whosoever will be recommended by these 2 persons will be nominated as will be appointed as the election commissioner itself. It also raises concerns over the independence of the election commission, which is an important public office overseeing the overall democracy in India. The Supreme Court concerns are that appointment should be free from executive influence. The excluding the judiciary is weakening the institutional independence of the election commission. That is the main concern of the Supreme Court, as well as what you can say as the judiciary. As of now, if there is a question that is coming in the prelims examination, that which of the following are the members of the selection committee who will be appointing the member as the election commissioner, it will be Prime Minister, leader of opposition, and union cabinet minister who will be nominated by the Prime Minister. So you will have to remember this selection committee itself for your upcoming examination. Also, Supreme Court concerns are that the parliament cannot undermine the constitutional principles through the ordinary legislation. That constitutional principle, like the free and fair elections, which are an inherent part of our constitutional morality, an important principle of the constitution. And if you see the constitutional basis, article 324 subclause 2 says that the parliament can make laws regarding the appointment conditions of the election commissioners, and from this power, with the help of this power itself, they came with the act in 2023. And until such law is made, appointment are made by the president itself. And court's earlier observation in 2023, the constitution intended the election commission to function independently and fairly. Institutional credibility is essential for the free and fair elections. The major issue is that there should be a balance between parliamentary power to legislate, independence of constitutional bodies like election commissions, that also needs to be kept intact for free and fair elections to uphold the democratic principles. Our next topic is Goods and Services Tax. This is related to GS Paper 3, Growth and Development, and this has appeared in today's The Hindu, page number 13. So the context is that there has been various notices that are served to various enterprises, and the authorities are saying that there has been some internal mismatches, and that is the reason those notices were served. If you talk about the basics of the GST, so GST was introduced by the Constitutional Amendment Bill, 122nd Constitutional Amendment Bill in 2014, and then after this 101st Constitutional Amendment Act of 2016, GST saw the light of the day, and this 101st Constitutional Amendment Act of 2016 provided for the central GST, state GST, that is CGST and SGST, as well as your UT GST and integrated GST. So whenever there is intra-state trade that is happening, in that case CGST and SGST that will be applicable, and whenever the interstate trade that is happening, then IGST or integrated GST that will be applicable. For interstate trade, that is trade between the state, that there will be integrated GST or IGST, and then whenever intra-state trade that is happening, then central GST and state GST, CGST and SGST that will be applicable. Also, this provided for this particular Constitutional 101st Amendment Act provided for GST Council under Article 279A of the Constitution, and under this the chairman will be the Finance Minister of India. The members under the GST Council, they will be nominated by the state government itself. Center will have 1/3 voting power and state will have the 2/3 voting power. GST Council will be the highest decision making body for the GST itself, and decisions will be taken by the 3/4 of majority itself, and that also shows that this is an institution that is promoting the cooperative federalism. Also, there are other examples like the Fiscal Health Index that is being released by the Niti Aayog, that gives an index based on the fiscal health of the states, and Odisha was the first state having the achiever status, so that the rank was first of the Odisha. So this Fiscal Health Index, where states are being ranked based on certain parameters, that is one of the index that is promoting the competitive federalism, whereas GST is promoting cooperative federalism. Also, recently there has been the reforms that were done in the GST, that is the next generation reforms, GST 2.0 reforms that were done in the last year itself, and now there is a simplified rate structure that we have shifted from 4 slabs of 5%, 12%, 18%, 28% to 2 slabs only. Now there are only 2 slabs. And in the first slab of 5%, there will be merit goods or essential goods which are generally needed by the middle class, by the consumers itself. There will be an 18% standard rate that will be applicable on all other goods which are not generally considered as merit or essential goods. Then there will be a 40% demerit rate that will be applicable on luxury goods, sin goods like tobacco, etc. Then will be relief on essentials. For example, there will be nil GST on life and health insurance or paneer, Indian breads, etc. These are the important commodities which are generally used by the common persons, common people. So there will be nil GST. Consumer goods boost. For example, GST rate cut 28% to 18% on small car, TV, AC, cement, auto parts. So let's suppose there is a person who was thinking to buy an AC or TV. So earlier 28% was the GST that was applicable on that product. So that product was costing very high. But whenever there is a tax cut to 18%, the effective price of that produce will come down, and now that the person who was thinking to buy the product will be able to afford that product. Also, renewable energy devices, there has been a GST that has been changed from 12% to 5%. That is boosting demand manufacturing as well as green energy. Then healthcare support, 33 life-saving drugs from 12% to 0%. Critical cancer, rare disease drugs 5% to 0%. So healthcare support has been also provided for under this GST. Then agriculture and rural push, farm machinery 12% to 5%, fertilizer inputs 18% to 5%, labor intensive goods, handicrafts, leather, etc. 12% to 5% is the GST that has been applicable. Then trade facilitation, that GST tribunal that is operational by December 2025. It will provide faster refunds, better dispute resolution, and it will be much more MSME friendly. That is the major reforms which has been done in the GST 2.0. Moving towards our next topic, that is K-shaped recovery, and the topic which is saying that war in West Asia has impacted more poor as compared to the rich. So in the West Asia, what we have seen that US and Israel has attacked the Iran, and then Iran subsequently targeted various other neighboring countries like UAE, Oman, etc. So this disruption that was visible, for example, blocking of Strait of Hormuz, which is one of the important trade routes, that has led to supply chain disruptions. And because of the inherent inflation, because of this disruption, because of the imported inflation, that is rise in the prices of the imported products, which was also transferred to other products which are using these imported products. For example, 60% of India's LPG needs are being fulfilled by the imports itself. When there has been disruption in the supply of the LPG, you can see the cost of the LPG has increased significantly. The cost of the petroleum products, etc., that might increase because of the disruption, because of the lack of proper supply. So this topic is related to GS paper 2, effect of policies and politics of countries on India's interests, and syllabus of GS paper 3, growth and development, and this has appeared in today's The Indian Express, page number 18. So whenever these disruptions happen, this can also lead to job losses. For example, few months back, there was the various protests that were happening in Noida, in Gautam Budh Nagar in Uttar Pradesh, and there has been various reports that there has been inconsistent supply of the raw materials, which has directly impacted the overall production capabilities of the companies, and that was also one of the reasons why they were not able to give the salaries, wages to the people, to the workers in a timely manner. So that was also one of the reasons why the protest happened. So now in this globalized world, whenever any disruption is happening in any one part of the world, or whenever there is an issue that is happening in any one part of the world, that is also impacting the other countries, that is also impacting the other areas. So whenever the job losses will happen, whenever the untimely wage payments will be happening, whenever the imported inflation will impact the increase in the prices of the goods and services, especially the essential items, it will impact more the poor people rather than the rich people, which has been also said in this article itself. So the major argument is that rising fuel and fertilizer prices due to West Asia conflict are increasing the cost of the living globally, and also the crisis is affecting the poor household disproportionately. It is creating a K-shaped economy where the rich households are maintaining or increasing the consumption, poor households are struggling to afford the essential. What is this K-shaped economy? This is a situation where one section of the society progress economically. So this is one of the sections which is progressing economically. They are getting the benefits, they are improving, their standard of living is improving, whereas there is another section which is getting negatively impacting. So economic inequalities are widening during the time of the crisis itself. Then what is the impact of rising fuel prices on US consumers? So low income households, here there is increased fuel spending by around 13.33%. Actual fuel consumption fell by almost 7%. We had to spend more money but consume less fuel. The middle income households, they are spending around $40,000 to $125,000. Fuel spending is increased by 17%. Real fuel consumption declined by 5%. High income households, there has been around $125,000 plus dollar. Spending increased by over 20%. Actual fuel consumption barely changed in last 1 year. The major insight is the rich household absorb price shocks by spending more. Poor household reduce real consumption despite spending more money. Looking only at the nominal spending hides the deepening inequality. Why actually this matter? Because there is a similar pattern emerged during the 2020 COVID-19 crisis, 2022 Russia-Ukraine energy shock. The energy inflation disproportionately hurts the poorer section than the poorer, as well as the poorer countries who will find it difficult to afford the products whose cost has become high. Also, if you talk about the global dimension, the rich countries can sustain consumption despite the higher prices because they have the extra surplus money. They have that buying capabilities which the poor countries, which poor people do not have. Also, poor countries may be forced to cut the consumption even if the expenditure is rising. Then our next topic is GLP-1 drugs. This has appeared in GS paper 2 health, and this has also appeared in today's The Indian Express, page number 14. So this GLP-1 drugs, they mainly are used for the better blood sugar control that will provide the lower weight as well as better health. So this glucagon-like peptide, GLP-1 hormone, this is the body's natural regulator of blood sugar and appetite. So this is a natural incretin hormone produced in the intestine after eating food. It is secreted mainly by the L cells of the small intestine, and the primary role of this particular hormone is to regulate blood sugar as well as the appetite, and based on that the person will be feeling hunger or they will be eating food. They stimulates the insulin release when the blood glucose rises. They also helps in maintaining the overall glucose balance in the body. They increase the satiety and reduce the hunger. They also suppresses the glucagon secretion, which otherwise increases the blood sugar. They also slows down stomach emptying, helping the food digest gradually, and also they plays major role in managing type 2 diabetes and obesity. These GLP-1 drugs also mimic this hormone to improve the blood sugar control and promote the weight loss. So here this glucagon like peptide 1 receptor agonists are the drugs they are used to treat the type 2 diabetes and obesity, and they mimic the natural glucagon like peptide 1 hormone which regulate the blood sugar and appetite. Major glucagon like peptide drug are the semaglutide, liraglutide, dulaglutide, triazepatide. For example, Ozempic, which are one of the weight losing drugs which has gained significant attention is in last few months, in last few years. That is also one of the GLP-1 drugs. The benefits of these GLP-1 drugs are, this helps in effective blood sugar control. This also helps in significant weight reduction. They also reduce the cardiovascular risk in some patients. They are also available in convenient weekly dose formulations. And in last few years, what we have seen that the generic GLP-1 drugs has also significantly gained attention, as well as there has been increase in the use of these GLP-1 drugs. If you see that type 1 and type 2 diabetes, that these drugs are mainly effective in type 2 diabetes. Here in this type 1 diabetes, the body doesn't make enough insulin. It is caused by the immune system reaction and often starts in childhood itself. They are generally hereditary in nature. These symptoms come on quickly itself at an early stage itself. It is mainly treated with the regular insulin injections that has to be taken by the patient itself. Then type 2 diabetes, where the body doesn't respond to the insulin. Lifestyle factors and the genetic factors contribute. For example, eating the ready to eat foods, aiding various foods having the high cholesterol, etc. So this is more common in middle age. Symptoms develop slowly. This is managed with the drugs and lifestyle changes, with the controlling the sugar intake, with the control of the soft drinks, etc. This can be subsidized. There is gestational diabetes also, which generally occurs in the woman having the pregnancy, etc., and that also subsidized whenever the pregnancy happens. After the pregnancy, generally the gestational diabetes goes away with. Okay? So that is the types of the diabetes that is visible in the different patients. Our next topic is Tara glide weapon, which is related to GS paper 3 defense, and this has appeared in today's The Hindu, page number 12. So first of all, let's try to understand what is the glide weapon. So glide weapon is a bomb or a warhead which is fitted with the wings and guidance system to glide towards the target after being released from an aircraft. So normally what happens that whenever an aircraft will release a bomb or any other warhead, there will be propulsion systems in this warhead also which will help in guiding this particular bomb or warhead. For example, BrahMos missile, they have their own propulsion system, and accordingly they help in gliding this particular warhead to the target. But these glide weapons, they have the wings and they generally are dependent on the gravity, etc. So they will be released from an aircraft. Wing will provide them lift, gravity will provide the forward motion, and then guidance system will be there in this warhead that will ensure that accurate target is being hit. So they will not require the continuous propulsion which is generally needed in the missiles. They also relies on aerodynamic lift as well as lift, and also they are equipped with the guidance systems. They also extends range economically. Then there is safe standoff strikes that happen. It is lighter, cheaper and easy to integrate. They also have the precision strike capabilities that they are used for precision strikes against the ground-based targets such as bunkers, radar stations and military infrastructure. This is ideal for the modern warfare. Now this Tara, which is the indigenous innovation, and this will provide the enhanced lethality, and this is also one of the example of the Atmanirbhar Bharat or the indigenous manufacturing. manufacturing. This is the Tactical Advanced Range Augmentation (TARA) glide weapon system. This has been developed by DRDO along with other important labs, for example, Research Center, Imarat, etc. There are important labs. Mainly, it has been developed by DRDO, and the maiden flight trial of this weapon is done by DRDO and Indian Air Force successfully. They have conducted the maiden flight trial of this Tactical Advanced Range Augmentation (TARA) off the Odisha coast on 7th of May 2026. And this is the first indigenous glide weapon system that converts the unguided warheads into precision guided weapons, and it will have the enhanced range, accuracy. It will be effective against the ground based targets, plus it will be low cost as compared to the missiles where there is a propulsion system that also adds to the cost, and that becomes much costlier. As compared to that, TARA will be much more affordable. It will have the advanced guidance system that will use the state of art low cost guidance system for the precision strikes, and it is also developed with the developed production partners and Indian industries. There has been production that has commenced that already, and this particular successful trial will further boost that production capability. This is also a major step towards the self-reliance and technological leadership in the defense. That is all from today's Analyst. Thank you very much. All the very best. Keep studying.